Convention number 37. This is a Smooth Winds panel, and on my left as panelist is... Did I? It's been a long convention. 30th of March.
April, excuse us.
Yeah. No, thanks. March. They'll enjoy this when they go to edit. So anyway, in March, and Paul Henze on my left, the chairman of the CALLERLAB Accredited CALLERLAB Coach Committee, is our panelist. I'm your moderator, so I'm going to modify my comments, and that should be safe. And we're glad you're here, and we're going to give you the opportunity for questions, answers. With a little luck, we may actually be able to get a square together and demo a couple of things. And we'll hope that it works out that way. I love to hear your accent. You know, I can remember the first time I was doing it, I was driving and I was lost trying to get to someplace for a dance, and I pulled up through the drive-through of the toll booth, you know, and I asked the gentleman, told him where I was trying to go, and he looked at me and he said, "Third exit." I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "Third exit." I said, "I'm trying to get to Chicago." He said, "What part?" And so it was fun. It was fun. So with that all being said and kidding around aside, Paul, if you'd like to get us rolling, please.
Okay. Everybody should have a lot of handouts up front. If those of you have not gotten your handouts, please do so right now. I want to look at it in two parts with you. One is going to be the analyzing a call and the sheets, and the other will be the analysis of the body flow, so be sure you've definitely got the two sections. It's because you'll need them, and we need to have you work them out and kind of play along the game with us, and you'll feel a little bit more comfortable by having one of each. And I'll wait till these others have got it. In the meantime, let me kind of ask a question this way. How many of you are right now either working with people in terms of trying to help them in calling or trying to learn yourself to improve yourself? First of all, how many are working with callers to be, our new callers? Okay, I see over here Vic and Norma, of course I know. John, of course, is. And the rest of you here are trying to help yourself in terms of where you are, how to analyze, how to work some things through, etc. Great. Got them all? Okay. Now, if you'll take them and kind of arrange it here so you kind of get an idea. We want to look at the analyzing a call. I'm like John. This is 4:30, isn't it? In December 2002. The analyzing the call sheet, I want you to look at this first, and not the one that's been filled out that you've got the second back side of it, but just the front side of it only. And then you'll notice I've got you a sample. One is for formations. Did you pick up a sheet that says formations on it? Okay, if you put it underneath the analyzing a call. And then second will be I made only one first and second page for the arrangements part of it. And then if you put underneath that the word time or the timing sheet. And I want to try and walk you through this because those of you that have been to a school before, and if you kind of give me a show of hands again, how many have been to a caller school? Okay. When you went through a caller school, did you look at this analyzing the call sheet first of all? Yep. All right. In depth or just a cursory inspection of it? A little bit inspection. All right. Here's where I come from. Of course, you have to realize I'm as a caller coach, I'm trying to work with a lot of new people, and what you end up knowing when new people come to classes is their knowledge level is trying to get as much as they can for 40 hours while caller coaches are trying to work with these people. And when they go home, guess what their mind remembers? Or hope you brought a tape recorder because it's probably about this big and your mind is up to here and you're tired, right? So what I'm trying to do today is take a little snippet out of this, and John and I have talked, and I'm going to pick up some points of wonder for you. Some of you that are working with coaches to be, you can kind of use some hints from this. In the same time, John will kind of work it through for how to work it in terms of flow on the floor. Now, let's look at the call itself, and don't look at the back sheet at this time. Just look at the front sheet. Notice how it breaks itself down. Here's what I do in a caller school. I ask each of the callers that are coming to take 10 sheets. Blank sheets. And I assign the first day of class, I'll assign 10 calls to them, generally from call 1 through about call 10 on the teaching order. And I'll say, I want you tomorrow before you come back to fill out the sheet the best that you can, and I give them just what I've given you. I've given the formation sheet, and I give them the arrangement sheets and the timing sheets. And if you will right now circle on your sheet the word formation about a third of the way down, and then circle the word arrangements. You'll know where it's going to be coming in order. And if you'll circle the very bottom of the call, the timing of the call. Now, the timing, when you work with timing, you've got to realize you're going to have, most of your calls are going to be 2 to 3, okay, at the most, for you to get preparational time. It goes command time, lead time, execution time. Your command time is going to be 2 beats before you get into the dancing of the call. Everybody agree? That being the case, when you look at your timing sheet, how long is it going to take you to get from point A, static square, with a square through? Just pull your timing sheet out. What's a square through in terms of timing right now? Squared upset. Everybody agree it's 10, okay? You've got to know this, because if you're a caller and you're trying to work with this, you've got to be able to say, okay, at beat what? I've got to have the call, so the next call is coming up for the dancer to work it. Call what? Or beat what? 8 at the max. Okay? Right or left through, and you're ready to go into the call, if you will, off the square through 4. So keeping all these things in mind, let's go back and then go to the very top of the sheet. The definition. CALLERLAB is very fortunate that we've got a lot of skilled technicians and that are putting together, have in the past, a lot of definitions. And if you'll look presently, that we're doing a lot of revisions now. Clark Baker is coming on with a lot more revisions. When we have these calls defined, the hardest thing is going to be interpretation. Most of you are going to reteach a call based on, help me out, how you learned the call. Do you know, have you really looked back at the definition for yourself, and now let's put you into the teaching mode. Have you ever looked back at the definition yourself to know how a call is taught? Was it the same as you were taught? I'm glad to see the waking the heads back and forth, because this is not the case always. If you look at how the calls are put together, you're going to see that this is not always the case, and I hope you surprise yourself when you look at this. But this is what you would do. You would fill out, first of all, the CALLERLAB definition. Now, let's pretend here that we're talking about the formation, and to just write the word in, square through. Now, let's go to the word formations, as you circled earlier. From what formations can the call start? Well, how many type? Look at your formation sheet. This is where you would go to your formation sheet. Well, what do you have to have when you start off? 4 people, and they have to be facing couples, right? So you can go to any formation that has any facing couples. Yeah. Next question, let's any dancers be facing? Yes or no? Yes. If so, how many? 4. Good. You're following right along. From what arrangements? Now go to your second sheet I gave you and look at, these are just a part. 2 sheets of, actually 7 sheets. And you'll notice on that there'll be a lot of arrangements. We'll leave this blank now, so you can be looking at this. Let's go on down. Is a free hand needed? And if so, which hand? Everybody agree a right hand? Okay, so we put the word right in there. Good preceding calls considering body flow. Well, if you're static square, you don't have any preceding body flow, do you? Any others that you could use it from? Pass through? Slide through? Good. Okay. Partner trade? Place of star through, use a slide through. There you go, okay. What formations may exist upon completion of the call? Now, I know we're being a little bit elementary here, but I want you to see sequencing, because when you are going to work with new people or you yourself, here's what I would stretch the new callers to do. I know 10 is going to be pushing them and taxing them, but it's going to have to be a homework assignment at night. If you took, and I mentioned this to several people before, if you took about 100 free sheets and you went through each one of the calls, and you went through it in this formation, arrangement, sequencing, timing, everything, I guarantee you when you get through, what are you going to be able to do? Will you know the call? And will you have any differences in your mind that you didn't have before, because you've had to think it through for everything? Now you pull these back out, you use them later on, you get into a teaching standpoint, and what can you do with your teaching? You pretty well are set to go. Will dancers be facing after you do a square through from a static? From a static square, yes. But you'll have situations where they will not be, right? If yes, how many would be facing or could be facing? Could be 4, could be also 8, could be also 2. Which hands will be free? Remember, square through, right, left, right hand's free. When I'm sure John's going to get there a little later on, you'll be able to see probably, are we also, after we do our square through, are we where we're right centered across from the dancer? Are we going to be skewed to the left? Or it could be skewed to the right? Is that important? Sure it is. He's going to pick it up, I'm sure, later on. What body flow will exist as the call is completed? Well, when you get through square through 4, how are you going to end up? Slightly shifted in, maybe, to the left or right? What about your dancers when you're doing from a static square going through a square through 4? What's the tendency for most people to do a square through 4? On the first couple of times they've been taught it. Wonder why? Yeah. Previous do. And so therefore you as a caller would have to watch out from your standpoint for future timing for this situation to happen. Okay? Timing of the call. Again, we looked at it earlier. How many steps to completely dance it? 10. Now, any teaching suggestions? This is your time that you can think of a teaching suggestion. Anything that you would think about from teaching a square through. This you'd have to work through on every call, but now what's here? What would you want to say from a square through that you would give as a teaching suggestion? Well, he's mentioned one, that you would have some problems with the square through because in the second hand, the people are going to want a courtesy term. Name and...
Susan Morris from Redmond, Washington. I danced the man's part at a new dancer dance this fall and was very surprised that every lady was offering me her left hand palm down and her right hand behind her back in a square through. And so what I got to thinking was, we always blame the boys that they're trying to do the courtesy turn, but it's really the girls offering their hand the wrong way. So I instructed all my ladies, make sure your hand is perpendicular to the floor, as in a right and left grand. Don't offer your hand this way. And it cleared up.
Any others have noticed anything on square through? How about, do you hold on too long? Okay. David? Okay, holding on too long. Anything else? Yes.
How many times do they not know when to stop?
This is Jerry Maurice from New Hampshire. You got to teach them to count because they won't finish it. And the last hand, because they have to do a pull-by, they try to do something different, like another turn. So it's very important. When I do it, I teach one hand at a time.
Okay. Any others? Good.
On your left and on your right.
Ken Forrester, Silver Spring. There are two things that I use. Is one, you put a square in the middle of them, like a chair, so they have to go around the outside and they can't take shortcuts. And when they finish completing going all the way around it, they're finished. But what I have found to be very helpful is tell them it's sort of like a mini right and left grand. That way they know which way they're turning if they're starting from a standard position. And it seems easier for them to think about it. But that's actually like a cleanup tip rather than an initial teaching tip.
Now, we're not trying to make this a teaching session, but we're trying to walk it through. These are the things that you need to be starting to put down on your pieces of paper. So when you start owning the call, you pretty well know yourself what's going to be your pitfalls later on.
Susan Morris again from Washington. What several callers in our area have started trying to do instead of counting up to the hands like we were taught is if you count down and do 4, 3, 2, 1, you're always going straight ahead on the 1.
Okay. You're going to find lots and lots of teaching hints, and we have sessions on that every year because every time you go somewhere, somebody else has thought up something. The one that Kent references, the mini right and left grand, there's any number of people that will do that, but they'll do it after they have sashayed the dancer. And that helps to cut down the courtesy turn issue as well. I had a gentleman who was in his very late 70s who was doing reasonably well and everything, but square through was not working. And I took him aside privately after the evening, and it was just he and I there. And I asked him, I said, Frank, do you still drive? And he said, well, yeah, of course I still drive. And I said, good. I just want to experiment with something, if you'll bear with me. And I stood right behind him, and I said, you know, you're the boy, and the square's in front of us, and I'd like you to drive me around the block. And I said, but everything's a one-way street to the right. But the last street's dead end. So what do you mean? I said, well, if you were driving, we'd go straight down to the block. So do that for me, you know. And we went down and we went around. So we went around the block. I read remind him the last one is a dead end, so we can't turn. And I said, that's square through. I mean, you're changing hands as you go, always starting with your right hand. And he said, well, that's no problem. And it wasn't. And I said, well, let's do it the other side. So I said, all right, now we're on this side. I didn't say girls' side. Now we're on this side. All the streets are to the left. Let's do it again. He was fine. So what do? We look for ways to relate to people. Sometimes you need to relate to what they do for a living. And the gentleman was an air traffic controller, but he couldn't figure out triangles. It scared me to death. But once I showed it to him and had him describe to me what those things do, those little dashes and stuff, he had it. So looking for ways to relate to individual problems is a situation. And the real art I have found is if you share something with the room as a whole because one or two people are having a problem, the art is doing that so they get it without messing up everybody else. And you're going to find different ways to approach that.
Which area was he traffic controller? I want to avoid that.
Yeah, he's retired.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
Retired but not retarded?
He's retired. He's doing driver's ed now.
Okay. Just to give you a heads up, if you notice on the back side of you analyzing a call, there is a square through filled in for you so you can pretty well see what we've done and how we walk it through so you can use this later on in your work. There's a section also that I gave you a second one, and this was called Analyzing a Call, and I put on the word cloverleaf, and here would give you an idea at the top of it, again that you see cloverleaf, and I added what word to it that's different that you didn't see on the other one. Look like this, I hope. It's on the back side, I think, of another sheet. Yeah, it's on the back of an analysis body flow.
Yeah.
You get it? Okay. If you look at this one, there's a word added there that I didn't have on the other one. Did you notice what it is?
Or?
After the paragraph of cloverleaf, what's the main title there? Styling. How many times is styling forgotten for anything in terms of formations and people and the way they dance? I guarantee you, if you teach a little bit of styling, I think we're letting it go today as teachers and as individuals. And I know in caller schools we're trying to emphasize this a little bit more and more. But styling is so important. I've listed on this cloverleaf. We won't walk through it for the sake of time, but I did want you to at least see how we work this one out also. And this gives you two that you can refer back to a little bit later on. But suggestion, working with yourself or working with other new callers, take time to let these guys know what you're talking about. walk it through them, have them do at least 10. Grade them, give them back to them, and then let them see physically what you've done so that they have appreciation themselves of what needs to be done. And if you notice some things wrong with it, show them. This is what was wrong, this is what was wrong. Say, okay, before you give them an answer, what's wrong and why did I mark this wrong? And let them think it through and then let them work it through in their mind one more time. Because what they're doing up here is just like you're trying to do on the dancing floor. You're trying to fine-tune it just a little bit closer and make them dance it easier for you. Now, if you go to the second sheet, which is called Analysis Body Flow, it's on the back side of this one, Analyzing the Call. Call it Analysis Body Flow. It'll look like this. Okay. This is Al Stevens. It's a color coach from across the waters in Europe. One time he and I were talking, and he sent this to me, and I want you to look at it. And let's just take it. Just don't take all of these. I just want to take one out only. And notice at the very top, we're trying to analyze it, and we want to know what is not good in the following, and how can you change it for better body flow. We're trying to get you set up here so whenever John steps up at the mic, you'll be able to kind of get some ideas of what we're trying to get your mind start working on. Look at the first one in Ocean Wave. Your regular right-hand Ocean Wave, right? Boys on the outside. It says here the ends to run, which would be who in this case? The boys, and then it says bend the line. Is that good body flow? What's wrong with that? What's the boys doing? If the boy's out here on the outside and the boy's trying to run, and then you're saying bend the line, what's the boy? He's backing up. All right, how would you change that body flow? What you make different about this in order so it flows good? Circulate, okay. Anything else? That'd have to be a couple circulate. Okay, or what else?
Oh, Mr. Cotter.
John?
Cast off 3/4.
Okay. Any others? Kent? The back. Boys trade and then do a bend the line. So you've got some motion going for that situation. All right, let's jump down to the second one. Third one. Facing couples, normal arrangement. 2 couples, right? Right and left through, reverse flutter wheel. That's a good one, isn't it? What's wrong with that one? Yeah. Reversing direction. Right and left through. Reverse flutter wheel. Who's backing up at that point? The boy. And you're asking the boy to do what again? Come back in the center and come back around. What would be a better call for flow? Right and left through and flutter wheel. Because who's moving? And if you want to, you could finish up with the boy doing his part if you need to, right? And coming right back across. Look at the 1, 2, 3, fourth one down, facing couples, normal arrangement. Touch a quarter, walk and dodge, partner trade. If you look at singing calls, how often is this done? How often do you call it? Be honest. How often have you heard it called on the floor? Okay? Touch a quarter, walk and dodge. The girl just slipped over, and then you ask her to do what? Partner trade, right? Who's it okay for? Oh, it's okay for the fellas, but who's it not okay for? Because she's just flipped over, and you're asking to do what? Flip right back. What would be a better flow for that? You thought about it before?
Mm-hmm.
Touch a quarter, walk and dodge. We had what said earlier? Cast off 3/4. Okay, who's going to cast? It's a problem.
Reverse flow for the girl.
Okay. What would happen if you said at this point, go forward and back? Does that change anything?
Sure.
How about a boy's fold? Okay. Getting your mind thinking, okay? Just trying to get your mind going. How about on the completed double pass-through situation? Let's look at this one just a minute. Center's in, bend the line. Well, it ends up being that. Isn't that okay? Okay. So what should it be instead? Cast off 3/4. Okay. Go down to the next one. Facing couples, normal arrangements. Dixie style to a wave, left swing through. Okay. Anything else? Any way that you want to change this in order to make it flow better? Vic, you had your hand up. Center's tray. Okay. What does it do with the flow at that point? Who's in the natural movement? All start with. Boys are doing a left touch a quarter, so the boys traded. Okay, there's your flow, and it's still going to maintain itself. Anything else that you could do in front of that? What do we generally have called, and when you hear this called a lot of times? Right and left through first, right, because it makes the girl a little bit easier. And most of the time you're going to find who stands there and does this thing after that. The boy generally, as opposed to maybe stepping across and then stepping forward to a left touch a quarter. Yes? Find this way. Let's look at the second up from the bottom. Starting with a double pass through. Center square through 3. Right, left, right. Hand availability for this. What would you add to it? How would you change that? Good. A little bit awkward. Anything else? Do-si-do. Good, Susan. Could do. Last one, double starting with a double pass through. Center square through 3 and star through. Right, left, right. Okay. What's here? What's the problem here? What could be done instead in place of a star through? Slide through. Great. Setting you up. This is John's time.
All right. Thank you, Paul. A couple of things that I'd like to talk about in terms of prepping and then also in terms of delivery, and then we can do some examples on some of the things that Paul's shown us that offer reverse body flow, and then of course there's the ever popular body flow issue, good body flow issue. If I was going to err on the side of too much, I'd rather err on the side, or if I err on the side of a problem, I'd rather have overflow than reverse flow. Reverse flow is one of the quickest things you can find to break down floor, which is no talent there, and the talent is not secondary. Good body flow is tremendous help to your success rate. Body flow is there. Trust your body flow. They will give you what you need, and also stabilize that flow in the right place. Really more successful results. You got to build that trust. You got to believe that it's going to flow. Reaching up, you got to keep getting. Banging up backwards and so on. Destroy the trust. That's something that takes a while to do. The better you are at it, the quicker you develop that trust with the floor. But it improves the success rate of the floor tremendously. You need to be highly aware of what's going on with this. McKinney's teeth. To me, part of this also in the call analysis that I would encourage everybody to do, first off, is if you have a computer program, shut it off, particularly if you're a newer caller. If you're a caller coach, I'd encourage you to tell the caller to turn it off, if you're a student to turn it off. I'm a huge believer in pushing checkers or dolls, especially as you're newer and you're now analyzing a call to learn what it does and how it feels from both sides. If Mary was here, she would tell you, how many of you callers, particularly the men, obviously, can dance on the ladies' side. Honestly, how many of you do that? Well, but if you ask lots, and you have to be honest, very often that's not the case at all. And she'd flat tell you, you have no business being a caller. She actually did that to me at a caller seminar one time and asked that question, and we were out of state somewhere, and I crawled underneath the table. She said, "You have no business being a caller." My wife is a caller. So, in any event, watching what happens with checkers or dolls by physically pushing them through, you have a sense of the kinesiology of the call, the movement, and what's going on. Even though it's not full body, you're actually doing that over and over again as you push them through. I think that's a huge help. I've watched newer callers get involved with the computer program. Computers do not understand body flow. They only understand what you give them. There are some programs that will demonstrate some body flow. especially when you figure out some of my little feature that says select call. And it'll list everything that it thinks you can do for you. That's not calling. That's not understanding what the calls do. Tremendous value in teaching about dancing. How many in the room can tell me, who are not already full-blown caller coaches, can tell me the difference between walking and dancing? Go ahead, David. Okay. Anything else? Even simpler than that. When you dance, your toes hit the floor first. When you walk, your heel hits the floor first. And if you're doing party nights, how many people do you see bouncing? First thing they want to do is bounce. Smoothing that out will help. A number of things, actually. Giving them the sense of dance, the sense of flow, the joy of movement, and some degree of sense of control of their body when they're moving lends to a positive experience. It makes people feel a lot better about what's actually going on. The other part of this is, I say this every time, dancers are not human checkers. Our skill, in great part, is a language skill. People ask me, when you go to a different country to call, you go to Germany to call, do you call in German? No, I call in square dance. What do you mean? Do-si-do doesn't mean a thing if you've never seen it. You've never heard of it before in your life. It doesn't mean anything more here than it means in German. Until somebody shows them what it means. So they learn the language. Well, if I'm having a discussion with you, and we're talking about a variety of things, and I say to you, well, the way this would normally work, yeah, and that would be, we could go over here and do that, and it works out really well. And if you've noticed, occasionally people run. If you're calling that way, square through 4, touch quarter, scoot back, boys identify, boys run right, you're not having a conversation. You're not employing the language skill of square dancing. You're not. And people should not be asked to dance that way. You wouldn't want to have a conversation like that, nor do you want dancers to dance like that. So you need to become conversant with the calls that you're using and treat it as a language. Granted, that takes time before you make it your own language, but you do it very quickly in a singing call. You make it your language in a singing call. I've had callers come to me and say, I can do a singing call just fine, it's no problem, but with this patter thing, I can't do that. And I said, take a singing call figure and just put those same words together in your patter. Not to mention the fact that it'll help the dancers be more successful when you get to the singer, but setting that aside, actually that came as a revelation to a caller this weekend. Really? You call the singing call figure in the patter? Yeah. It's a great tool. But the language aspect to me is very critical because I like to relate to it that way. These words all mean something when you're putting them together. It takes practice to do that. Some of that has to do with metering of the words to the music. And again, the singing calls lay that out for you rather clearly. And some callers actually do better learning about presenting patter and phrasing their patter by using singing call music as patter. That seems to be a good start.
Yeah, I was just going to mention one thing. Be sure and check your music. Do not accept always all the choreography that you see written on that music. If you do, you're going to make the bad mistake of saying, okay, that becomes accepted up here. Once it gets up here, it's awful hard to get it out of here in your head. I think those of you that work with music enough, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
And I would encourage you, no matter how new a caller you are, because you are going to be using the tools that Paul just gave you, don't trust the cue sheet no matter whose name's on it. I've seen some of the top stars in the business do stuff that just plain doesn't work. Now, in some cases, it could be that it's a typo. It got misprinted. Check your sequences on these cue sheets when you get them. Push checkers through them. Make sure. Nothing will mess up a singing call quicker. You got through the opening break, fine, everything's cool, and you do the first figure, and all of a sudden, okay, well, that doesn't work. Let's pick up a needle and start again. Not a great experience. Getting back on track, though, that delivery aspect that Paul mentioned to you about command time, lead time, command time, delivery for your execution time, that all ties in together for the smoothness. And I think probably the best way you can do this, we can talk about that, is to demonstrate some of it. There are some variables that you need to keep in mind. some of which you can control and some of which you can't. And you can control whether you prepared or not, obviously. You can control the tempo of the music. You can control the degree of difficulty. You can't control the makeup of the individual group that you have. Maybe the group that you have people that are handy capable, or maybe they are people that are just have infirmities that present a problem for them of natures that you can't preclude that. You can't say, sorry, you can't come in, and you don't want to say that. So that's something that's sometimes quite often out of your control. Dancer ability, if it's just a one-night dance, pretty much they're going to control that. If it's a lesson group or your regular club group on an ongoing basis, then you can begin to, add some control to that and helping them. Controlling the environment, you don't always have control of that. We're going to dance on carpet. Or you're at a dance, it's a street dance, and you're dancing on macadam or concrete somewhere. You can't control that environment. So you have to make adjustments, whether it be in tempo. If it's an acoustical issue, you try to make whatever adjustments you can there. So there's controllable factors that impact the smoothness of the dance that you're going to be able to present. If you become skilled and very flexible at choreo management, if you find you're successful, consistently successful sight calling, and you have a dancer in the room who just had a knee replacement, if you have that kind of command and control of the material, you can make sure that dancer has the shortest distance to travel, which is kind of a neat thing in today's world, especially because I think we find ourselves in that circumstance more and more. So those are good goals to have, but all of it needs to be smooth. And a dancer that's recovering from something, it's even worse for them to have bad reverse body flow, much worse. So you look at your controllable variables when go into the room, check it out, and figure that out. Look at your crowd and your group. Are you calling to teens? Is it a camp? As Bob does many of those. I suspect your tempo's not 122. Yeah, and that's a factor too. It's all, and that is part of smoothness. When they first gave Paul and I the description of this panel, and we talked, I said, well, we could do it. We could do it. Everything as they described it. They're giving us 2 full days, right? We have so many overlapping elements in here. There are so many disciplines that overlap in developing smooth dancing, delivery, flow, all the mechanics as well as the language skills that I mentioned, that it takes a while, and we can't do all of them. But when you have a tool like this, we've talked about this so many caller schools, and callers say, oh, yeah, fine, I know what right and left 3 does. And they don't think about it at all, really. If we can get a demo square, I will show you the one that first made me aware of body flow. Nobody had ever talked to me about it. I had been a singing caller to start with, and then I went to caller school with Parker, the gentleman who developed and pointed out the aspects of symmetry to us. And he never talked about body flow, though. He talked about everything else. And I'm out calling along. I'm cooking. I'm doing good. Caller comes up to me and he says, after tips, he says, you don't want to do that. I said, what? And he repeated it. I'm going to let you dance it so you can see how bad it was. And he told me, and I just went, the light went on. Nobody had ever mentioned that. I've been calling for 2 years, almost 3 years. Nobody ever said a word about it. And he was right. And the rest of my calling career, and as long as I'm calling, I'll always be thankful to John Spolsky. I didn't know he was this big, heavy, bearded dude that I'd never seen before. Came up and told me I was wrong. And he was right. So if you'd like to dance a few things, we can dance a few of the examples of good and bad. I think that makes a difference. There's some good examples. There's some very everyday examples in here that we see almost in every caller school, and there's a reason for that. Newer callers tend to make some of the very same mistakes. The ends run, bend the line thing, the very first one that Paul showed you. When callers are brand new and they don't know all the calls, they don't know all the choreography, and they're searching about, they're not thinking about body flow. There's like, what else can I do from here? If it's a brand new caller, you can put a list of calls in front of them that's legal from, here's a list. You can call anything from here. It's from facing lines. You can call anything from here, ocean waves. It doesn't matter. They'll say, boys run, bend the line. Because they can't process that much data as a brand new caller. So you have to take it in pieces. You can't swallow the whole apple. But you want to find things that are going to be vitally critical to you having some degree of success on the floor. some of these issues will guarantee you a little bit better success. Standard applications, if you don't have it, get it. That's designed to give you the ways that tend to be the most successful for the floor. Do that. Pay attention to the body flow. Those two things alone will give you a greater sense of success. And then you'll have to deal with choreo management, which for many folks is a bugaboo. It's, smoke and mirrors and dark magic, but it'll come clear in time. So could we have a square? I think we have almost enough people to make a square. And we can demo a few of these things for you. And we do want to give you an opportunity, if you will, to ask some questions or share some ideas that you have or experiences. I didn't hear you. Yeah. Who'd you say was common? Abraham Lincoln said, God must love the common man because he made so many of them. With a bound to the partner in the corner of the hall, and when they get there, head two couples go right on in through. Same forward, lead to the left. Now I gave you time. If I hadn't given you time, right? Go right on in through. Lead to the left. So what's wrong, right? But also what's the body flow direction of a courtesy turn? You're courtesy turning to your left, right? And leading left should be okay. But what if I did it reversed? If I had said right and left through and lead to the right? Square your set. Right? And that's the one that I did. I said, heads go right and left through, lead to the right, go do your right and left through, I'm sorry. Right? Lead to the right. Dancers will do it for you. It's not as bad as when they fight good flow, but they will do it for you. But it never occurred to me. I'll give you a microphone, gentlemen. That stranger, long, tall stranger in the corner.
Vic Cedar, California. Along these same lines, we have a choreo database on the web, and we've got a lot of singing calls in there. One of the singing call sequences is heads promenade halfway, lead to the right, circle up 4, blah, blah, blah. And a promenade halfway feels just like a right and left through. You're turning to the left, and when you get there, you turn to the left all the way. So why don't you square your sets here for a moment? Have the heads promenade halfway. No. Lead to the right. Now, there's a little bit of a jerk there because you promenaded all the way, you faced in, and then you led to the right. Head square your set again. But the way it's called, if you say heads promenade, and lead to the right, circle up 4, you're already going in that direction. And it's a lot smoother. Circle up 4, break out, make a line. So we had somebody enter into our database that's bad flow. But they didn't realize it's really a timing issue. If you give the lead time into the next call, you can do it.
And that takes, Vic's absolutely right, but that takes a fair amount of sophistication and experience to know just where to deliver that. Right? Most
square your sets.
Please square your sets. Most dancers themselves have not been taught to dance that well that they can respond at that exact point. And certainly many callers can't find that spot to do that. But it can be done. Some of our best callers are able to get dancers to do things that you say, you can't, how can you do that? But for most, well, they do. For most callers, especially as you're developing as a caller and when you're developing, you're mentoring as a caller, I would not ask people to be that aware of trying to do unique things that early. I understand the comment that Vic got, and he showed you why it could and couldn't work at the same time. So sometimes there are ways, but fundamentally when we're starting off, I wouldn't look for the ways to curve that edge quite so early. I'd make sure that I had more fundamental body flow on everything I was doing, that I knew what would happen. Okay, I think that makes a difference. Paul, you wanted to say something, I thought?
Okay.
Okay. I'll have to add one that takes time. Heads to the middle and they come right back. Do the right on in through. Lead left. Veer right. Circulate. Bend the line. Half sachet. Once and a half. You're so good. Look at this. Good. You're all right.
I'm carpet. Don't listen.
But it was interesting. Did you notice what happened, though, after the half? Right? You did the once just fine, but after the half, you had movement, and then you had to adjust, right, to reconnect. And you're going to get that on a lot of calls. Do a double pass-through. Now, you notice everybody slid back together and took hands, and that's correct because that's how it was originally written and taught historically. Some of our dancers get a little too sophisticated and want to know why they're not staggered. I mean, I passed a right shoulder, and I'm off on that side, but I had to readjust to get back to back. Right, and that's going to happen on a number of calls. Have the leaders partner trade, please. Okay, and let's have everybody slide through. And a right on in through. I'm sorry, my fault. Changed genders on me, my fault. You too, Bob. Yeah, there you go. Couples circulate. Have to pick a gender. Pick a gender, any gender. Centers trade. Bend the line. And a right on in through. Dixie style dual wave. Centers trade. Ends run. Bend the line. Write that one down. You want to have that in your repertoire as something not to do.
That's what we had on the sheet earlier. That's why.
That's exactly why. Pass the ocean. Good. Centers run. Centers trade. Circulate. Half tag the line. Scoot back. Walk and dodge. Boys trade. Now you know how I feel. Okay. Now, but you notice instead of the walk and dodge, partner trade business, the way that has fallen into the walk and dodge partner trade has fallen in to be successful is the girls, generally the girls, have made it work for us by doing a basketball type turn to be able to flip it around to make it feel better for themselves. But they shouldn't have to try to accommodate. That's our job. We're choreographers. They're not. So after the walk and dodge, I had the boys trade. They were walking straight ahead. Was it a little harder? Sure, because they had to identify, even if it had been a standard setup that we're used to, everybody easily identifiable by gender, still, that's a little harder. That's not common. But it's a flow issue that will work, as with the fold, certainly, that was mentioned before, which is a good one. Sometimes thinking simple, by the way, is the hardest thing to do, but thinking simple will get you a lot farther in the long run. Cast off 3/4. Chain down the line. Pass through. Do the wheel and deal, and when they get there, now zoom. Centers slide through. Centers star through. And zoom. I happen to hate that particular action because the center two dancers just did a star through, turning in toward each other. To do the zoom, they have to reverse and go the other way. It's been called at you enough that you make it work, but that's not good flow either, and it's one that needs to be avoided. Frankly, just in general, the smoother we can have people functioning, the better off we are. That's without a doubt. Have the centers pass through, please. Swing through. Centers run. Circulate. Tag the line. Face right. Circulate. Not bad. Half tag. Walk and dodge. Girls trade. You were going straight ahead, so you didn't have a flow issue, right? But you had an identity issue, right? All right. Everybody hinge left, please. Centers trade. Spin the top. Recycle. Sweep a quarter. Veer right. Veer left. Left chase. We had a couple of issues there, all right? One of the issues, right? Well, that was one of the issues. It was overflow. After a period of time, it was overflow. And on top of that, it was an uncommon location from which to call the call. A legitimate position to call the call. And if you had fewer left actions in front of it, it would have danced just fine. But that's an overflow example. And I think that's one thing that we sometimes miss. Would you column circulate, please? Everyone trade and roll. Thank you. Pass the ocean. Swing through. Spin chain through. The ends circulate. All 8 circulate. Twice.
Overflow.
Overflow again. But the notable part of the overflow was after the spin chain through. The last part for the centers is a 3/4 cast. The next call was a circulate. So you have one of those dancers that has to do another 2/4. So you got a 5/4 turn there. Some callers will tell you that they accept up to 4/4 turn. After that is overflow. I try to back off even of that.
Remember he said, too, you're on carpet, and if you had a person that had a bad leg or bad knee, you just screwed them into the floor.
Yep.
And that person would probably go limp off the floor after that.
Or if you had an individual, and this happens, that had orientation, dizziness issues, and so on, that happens. Boy, you'll make them sick. Literally, they'll drive right off the floor. So we want to be careful. But if I had to err, as I said before, I'd rather err on more body flow than less. But you have to be careful. When you get really wound up about good body flow, and everything has to be good body flow, that's when you can tip over the edge. Right? But the easier part is the more common part is to have bad body flow because you don't really know what the calls are doing. So that makes a huge, huge difference. Do a linear cycle, please. Yeah, the whole call is always good to do. Now, one of the gimmick things that callers call, and gimmicks have a place limitedly. But, you've heard them do the linear cycle, boy walk, girl dodge. Let's do a boy walk, girl dodge. Good. And girl walk, boy dodge. Girl unwalk, boy undodge. Now, I've seen that type of thing used as a gimmick. A little bit of that goes a really long way because you can force body flow. Now, I have also seen some callers try to use bad body flow knowingly as a gimmick to sucker the floor. Well, I'm sorry, but surprises have a limited value. The other reason for lots of repetition in our lessons, by the way, is muscle memory. Muscle memory is really key, and I can tell you about dancers who dance plus, and then they go into a dance, but they wouldn't dance plus for a long, long time. Everything had to be advanced because that's what I'm working on. That's what I'm working on. And they come back and they ask me to do a plus or a mainstream call, and they are at the very best, they're hesitant because that goes away. You need the best dancers dance more than one program. Best dancers to make them consistent. You'll see that as a rule.
John, you see it across the country that the higher they go up to, the less the styling stays a part of them and starts backing away.
Styling just generally doesn't get taught at all, hardly anywhere anymore. Or when it does get taught, it gets forgotten by both the caller and the dancer. And that's a long, long standing issue. I don't even remember when the National was in Atlantic City. I can't remember what year, but that was forever ago. And they asked me to do a 1-hour clinic on the main floor for styling because they were worried about the lack of styling. So I did a full hour. I told them, I said, okay, but I don't know. People came in and they danced and they executed the styling that we showed them. We even did skirt work then. So that was great. And I just hung around for the very next hour. And most of the people were still in the room. Most of the styling wasn't. And they had just had it. So then you ask yourself wondering, well, do the dancers want styling or not? Well, maybe it's because they've never had enough chance to see the value of it. And that is a factor because it's still dance. It doesn't have to be all, flourish, but it needs to dance well. One of the styling issues, let's do this, have the boys run. Now, hopefully you've seen this before. When we ask you to do a Dixie style to an ocean wave, there's some counter dancing that needs to go on here. Some people call it styling, some call it counter dancing. But if I were going to do the call, I'd put something evident in front of it. Since you have a perfectly flat starting space, no motion direction, do a reverse flutter wheel, please. And then let's do a Dixie style. Now you notice the girl goes in to pull by. The boy moves over to accommodate the courtesy turn. dancers need to be taught that, and they can be taught it just in simply ladies' chain. They can be shown it there because it occurs there, and that's something that is important to show the dancer to know how does the call dance. The dancer might read the definition. You might give an exact, precise definition, and if that little term doesn't happen to be in the definition, and you don't teach it, they don't know, and it's very awkward otherwise. So, go ahead, Paul, please.
Yeah, this is where I was talking about earlier, which on your analysis of the call, how would you set up this, or what was to be a suggestion to get your dancers into this? Maybe you could do some left touch of quarters, left do-si-dos. Get them a chance to start thinking mechanically so that when you get ready to do that Dixie style, your left is in your mind, okay? It's ready to start thinking about it.
Again, and muscle memory and repetition, what are dancers used to? Let's go ahead and do this. Let's just do this. If you will, left swing through, center's run, center's trade, cast off 3/4. It's not commonly called. Good. Pass through. Bend the line. Spare through. All the way. Left chase. So, what do we do on the spare through? We should have a nice left-hand column. Right? When we did the spare through, the last hand was a pull by. We went straight through. Okay, good. So, left or right should not have been an issue. What it was, because it's not commonly called, especially from there. So, familiarity, with locations, what I call geographic locations in the square, familiarity will make a big difference in the smoothness. If they're familiar with something, they're going to do a lot better job handling it. And even if you have tons of variety, but they're used to that type of thing, you're fine. But you've done it correctly. But if they're not used to it, I don't care how good the body flow is, you're going to have some hesitation. If you would, walk and dodge, please. Left chase. Eventually. Okay. Good. Trade. Would you all face in, please? Thank you. What's in? Another thing that I've not seen documented anywhere, but I believe exists. We can call to the dancers. They're moving. The motion's good. A follow-on call might be fine without giving you body direction. But if a fair amount of what you've been doing immediately preceding has given you a specific right or left direction, to me it seems that there's an inertial part of our brain, if you will, that's continuing in that direction. Even though you didn't have that direction, the most immediate preceding call might have been straight ahead. But you've been working in a left motions in general or right motions in the preceding couple of calls, not the immediate preceding. There's a tendency to want to continue in that direction, even though the call itself may have a very specific definition, or even if the caller says left chase. If you've been working the other way, sometimes your body will carry you, even though the immediate preceding call didn't force it. Now, I don't know why that is, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a neurologist that can tell you if that's true, but to me it's like an inner gyroscope that seems to keep spinning just a little bit longer than our physical body is moving, and it seems to make a difference. So I try to watch for not overdoing that type of thing, and if I think it's happening, I'll try to give the dancers, a bit of a break from it as best I can. Pass the ocean. Spin the top. Fan the top. Oh, I can make it better than that if you'd like. So it's an overflow issue, particularly for the centers. The ends, it wasn't as bad for the ends because while they were continuing that rotational aspect, it was in a larger arc. And being a larger arc, it's not as difficult to deal with that. So that's something that you can watch for. But some of them are just amazingly bad that we end up finding ourselves involved in. If you would, spin the top, fan the top, roll twice. So, we got issues all over the place. Great set. Now, also what was difficult about that, over and above the overflow, was the fact that orientation. After we complete a call, we need to know where we are. We need, as a dancer, we need to be able to have a hand touch. Hand touches are so critical. We teach it in beginners. We emphasize it for a while. We stop emphasizing it. They get away from it. They graduate. They go out, and you can see it in new classes in the spring, time and time again. They've stopped touching hands, only because they haven't been reminded. And we need to keep that in there. That's really vital for dancers knowing where the heck they are. And as a teacher, again, not making it a whole teaching session, but don't lose sight of that, because you will help their success rate tremendously. And if you get them back to touching hands after they've graduated, let's say it's a spring graduation for sake of argument, and you see that, stop and say, I'm about to give you something that will improve your success rate by 50% immediately. Right now it's going to happen. Show them, but also show them what happens when they don't. And we'll do it slowly, just so they can see what might happen. But we lose track of that. Now, is that part of smooth dancing? Of course it is, because you want them to be successful and to know where they are. If they don't, people will be turning every which way but loose, or grabbing or jerking. The German call I referred to as grabbing and pulling. And so we need to avoid that. Well, did you have some other examples that you wanted to share at this point? Would you? Could you? Did you? Hi. Didn't mean to wake you. Okay. I'm just teasing. I'll
jump in occasionally.
Oh, okay. I was about to have them sit down, so if that's not the case, go ahead and jump in. Okay. All right. Let's do just one little thing so you can physically move and feel like you're doing something, okay? All right. Sides past the ocean. Ping pong circulate. Extend. Recycle. Sweep a quarter. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Spread. Okay. Pass through. Tag the line. Face in. Star through. Double pass through track 2. Did you notice how it was delivered? Double pass through track 2. It's not double pass through track 2. Some callers will take an extra beat to be able to take a breath because they want to pitch their voice up a little bit to emphasize the track 2 to get the woo-woo from the crowd. But it's thrown the timing off. Those are some couplings of some of the calls that you need to couple together. And as Paul pointed out earlier, most calls, commands, can be given in 2 beats. Some 3, but many of them in 2 beats. It's kind of hard to get that in and still take a breath in the middle of it and still get it out and give it the emphasis you want and have it time. We're pretty quick at it as callers. We're pretty quick at sliding that in. But some things need to be coupled together, and that's back to the language skills that we talked about, feeling like it's a language, like it's a sentence. Recycle, please. Veer left. Chain down the line. So I'm having a conversation. I want to take the dancers for a ride. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Double pass through. Centers in. Cast off 3/4. There's always that adjustment in the centers in. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Centers slide through. Back away. The other square through 2. Whoop. Same sexes. Did you do it correctly? No. Okay. And, yeah. Sorry, guys. All right. Everybody just trade and roll. Pass through. Let's see. All the boys, you turn back. Guaranteed way to figure out if you're not sure who's who. It's never boys run. Never. Because invariably that's when they're standing next to each other. So either boys trade or boys you turn back or girls trade to help identify. I learned that, when I started having the opportunity to call in the gay community, which is often males everywhere for the greatest part. And I decided to do better, and I didn't. And Kent usually dances the girls' side at home for me, and I'm aware of that. But maybe that's what it is. Maybe I just should get used to not watching you at all. All right, hinge, please. Ends, pass through. Okay. Do the wheel and deal. Spread. You may not be normal, but you might be, pass through. Tag the line, go all the way through. Centers in. Cast off half. Pass through. Cast off a quarter. Right. We had another one of those. So we're going straight ahead, but you were going straight ahead. So why did it feel that way, Jerry? But in fact, you were going straight ahead. But it also may be, how many times do you usually go the other direction on a cast off 3/4? So there's some of that muscle memory working against you there, right? Okay, let's do this. Partner trade. Pass through. I'm going to try it again. Right? Cast off a 1/4. Half tag. Now that flow will work, but the dancer has to understand how to cast off a 1/4. Cast off's a great call, but it's a heavily underused call. You know, you very rarely see it from 2-pace lines, for example, and you very rarely see a 1/4 or and a half, that type of thing. So those are things you experiment with as you're analyzing what the call will do. Now, again, judgment factor. Is this too hard for the floor? How many variables, that we've talked about could affect that? But did when you saw how to cast off a 1/4 and a half tag, that should have felt appropriately. It should have felt very comfortable to do. You had all the motion that you needed. I'd have been careful in the next call, but that's the kind of thing that we need to look at in smoothness as well. Remember, anything you get like that is not a weapon. It's intended to be a tool. I've seen the mentality of the caller who suddenly learns that, hey, what do you know? Swing through starts with a right hand no matter what. And then they decide to use that to beat the floor up instead of using it as an effective calling tool that can dance well. Recycle for me, please. Good. Pass through. Boys trade. Ha. Right. All right. Girls trade. Star through. Circulate, please. Good. Bend the line. Do the right on in through. Dixie style to a wave. Swing through. Starts in the middle. Chain down the line. Pass through. Do the wheel and deal and down. Those centers pass through. Swing through. Doing all 8, circulate. Centers run. Couples circulate, move it up this way, and then half tag, face right, bow to the partner, and the corner. Okay. Combinations like that will work. Did you want them up for anything more, Paul, at this point? You want to keep them up? Oh, 5 minutes questions and answers. Please have a seat. Thank you very much. You make a big difference. And sometimes dancing it gives you a stronger sense of how these things will and won't work. All that being said, can we talk about questions, comments, offerings? Anybody have anything they want to share that's like, don't do this or do that? In the very back, if you'll come and take the microphone, and we'll ask you to identify yourself and share with us whatever it is, question or comment, or if it's a complaint, tell Paul.
Bill Ponton, Reno, Nevada. Also along the same line, I don't have any hip on the left-hand side, and so I can't fault a caller that calls something to make when I can't turn left. But I can tell you at the end of the night, if you've got smooth flow, I'm not half as tired.
Yeah. That's a very good observation. Dancers will be much less tired if they're allowed to dance and dance smoothly. They'll have a great evening.
And stay longer with you, too.
And they will. They will stay.
Watch your floor at night. If they leave early, guess what's probably happened?
Yeah. Who was next? Susan, go ahead.
While we're over here.
Oh, you're right there now. Yeah, David, please.
It's David Vera from Bowie, Maryland. One thing I noticed that caused a little bit of hesitation when you called a boys trade. In order to do that, I have to know who the other boy is, and I was a little confused about that.
Yeah.
And that kind of slowed things down a bit.
But you have to, yeah, it's true. But that's going to happen. Well, yeah.
Jerry Maurice from Litchfield, New Hampshire. I keep saying that's where I work. It's where I live, Donna? Deerfield.
Anyhow, explain to him where he is and where he lives.
I don't know where I am anymore. Anyhow, I noticed when you were doing the spin the top, fan the top type of thing, one of the biggest problems that I have is having people learn how far 3/4 is. Mm-hmm. And, of course, doing that 3/4 and 3/4 is almost impossible. They'll never find the walls.
Mm-hmm. But counting walls is a help when the people are new students, but you're right.
I usually tell them to do half and then do one more quarter.
But see, things like that works for you. That's not bad, but you got to find it as long as it doesn't confuse somebody else. Susan?
Susan from Washington. I noticed last night at the Canadian Collars dance, the square I was dancing in, we danced sashayed the whole night, except for the brand new collars. I was much less tired than when I danced as a woman. Like, incredibly different. Like, my knees didn't hurt at all.
So what does that tell you, do you think?
Pardon? I should have been a man. Right. Yeah, the choreography is totally different for the man than the woman.
As we commented earlier, it's often made more difficult, and callers, you need to go dance the other side if you're a male caller and learn how to do that, to be, as some of our friends will say, to be bidantual. Right? And that's a common term anymore.
Vic Cedar, California. One thing I noticed from your analysis of body flow sheet, a glaring omission, is the famous star through veer left combination.
Yeah.
Which I think
Thank you.
should definitely be on there, because
that should be added.
That's pretty ugly.
Yeah, it is. It's just, I don't care how you do it.
And
I think, go ahead, Vic.
The other thing is, when you did the touch a quarter, walk and dodge, boys trade thing to avoid the partner trade, it seems at the mainstream level, although the standard position for walk and dodge is right-hand waves, the boys facing in, you do the walk and dodge, you are very limited at mainstream to what you can call next without calling partner trade, which is why I think they do it so often, because that's the only thing that pops in their mind. That's the only thing you can think of. You don't think of the boys fold, boys trade. I was wondering if you had any other things other than perhaps you turn back that you can call after that.
He just named the three, probably, that are the most commonly done.
I'll go forward and back.
Forward and back. Remember what I said about thinking simple? Face right. Just face right. You have a column, right-hand column. Because the girl's dodging right, the boy's going straight ahead shouldn't be an issue. And I've done this exercise before where I've said, okay, go back and think. I'm talking really accomplished callers now. Go back and start thinking about that. What else could I do from there? Because Vic's right. It tends to be limited, but there's more than you think. I believe the best total we came up with that allowed for decent body flow, et cetera, was, I think we came up with 7 things, staying within mainstream. I think I had that number. But Bob, I'm like you, the last one. We're out of time.
Bob Riggs, Colorado. One of the things that I found fascinating, and this is sort of the overflow issue on a macro scale, out at Nationals last year in Long Beach, I came out of one tip, and I felt like I had been turning left the whole time. There were ladies' chains and right and left throughs, and even though there were some square throughs and star throughs in there, I came out of that with this I'm turning left thing. I had been spiraling left for an entire tip. The same motion you get out of the right and left through backing up thing. And anybody who has a left hip that gives any trouble is going to come out of that going, oh my God, what was that? Plus you get dizzy. What I found was, and this was all across the board, several different callers, we tend to have a lot of choreography that takes us in one direction. And especially when we're calling it a festival framework where we're doing a lot of singing call figures and a lot of figures that they take us in this direction, spiraling counterclockwise for the gent. And I went, okay, what do I do about that so I don't do it? But that was the comment I had, is we have to be careful not just with 3 or 4 calls, but an entire tip of calls that leads us in one particular direction in the way the choreography goes.
The other part of that, it's a correct observation in my opinion. The other part of that is if you get the sense that you're calling the same thing over and over again, because that's part of what was happening there, because there's that muscle memory thing again, and the callers know it's successful, and you're at the National, and you got 1,000 people in front of you, and you want to make sure that everybody's successful, so you fall back into those routines. But if it's your regular dance, you start feeling like, geez, if I say swing do, boys run right one more time, I'm going to strangle myself with my own microphone cord. What do you think the dancers are feeling? Right?
They'll help you.
It may not be that exact combination, but if you have a sense somehow that you feel like you're calling the same thing over and over again, double check, you might well be. And so you need to step up to the plate and look at, adjusting that. And just remind yourself sometime to think about it. It's a good note to make to yourself right up by the microphone, direction, and some note to yourself that will make you just spot check it. we thank you. That's a good point. Record yourself, listen to it, dance it. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming in. We appreciate it. Thank you to Paul. Appreciate it, Paul.
Let's thank John also for the time.
Right.
All righty. Get out of the way. Make room for these other people.